It's July 8th, 2014, at the Varna airport in Bulgaria. A 28-year-old German man named Lars Mittank walks through the terminal. He has a yellow t-shirt, shorts, big backpack. He's finally going home from a trip. He never boards the plane. The airport cameras catch everything. Lars walks into the bathroom, but when he comes out, he has no backpack, no wallet, no passport, and no phone. He left everything in the bathroom. And then he runs, full sprint down through the terminal, out the exit doors, across the parking lot. He hits a 6-foot-tall barbed wire fence and jumps over it, right into the other side. And then he lands in a field of sunflowers, and from there, runs into the forest beyond. That's it. That's the last image that anybody has of Lars Mittank. Nobody knows what he was running from. Nobody knows what happens in that forest once he jumped the fence. And as of today, 10 years later, nobody has found him. This is File 04. Welcome to the 1111 Files. 1111 isn't a coincidence, and neither is the fact that you found this. There are questions this world hasn't answered yet, mysteries that don't add up, cases that defy explanation, and then there's everything else. The cosmic, the conscious, the ancient, and the unseen. The things that live just beyond what we think we know. We cover the strange, the unexplained, and the deeply curious. From missing persons and cryptids to consciousness, manifestation, and what science can't quite explain yet. Because the universe is so much stranger and more magnificent than we're told. And I believe we're all here, right now, for a reason. I'm Aubrey. Welcome to the 1111 Files. Welcome back, seekers and deep thinkers, or my weirdos, whatever you prefer. This podcast is a little bit different. I'm attempting to film it. So whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening to the audio version, it's a little different. This isn't my permanent setup. This is kind of my temporary setup until I get a little bit of a studio going. I don't think it's bad. I think it's good. Hopefully the audio is okay. If the audio sounds a little bit different, I am in, definitely a different environment than I was podcasting in before. Before I had a lot more carpet. I have hardwood floors in my apartment. So if it sounds a little bit echoey, I do apologize. It will be fixed. We're still learning. We're still learning at this. But I am excited to get into this because it's definitely different from what we've done so far. And, I'm not saying we're only going to do aliens or cryptids or cursed land, but this is spooky. It's just a 28-year-old guy on vacation in Bulgaria who walked into an airport one morning and was never seen again. At first glance, it sounds a little bit more true crime, right? But the thing is, nobody can explain it. Nobody. Not the police, not the doctors, not his family, not the literal millions of people who have spent years going through everything with a fine-tooth comb and going through the footage, because there is footage of him trying to find answers. The one thing that makes this even spookier and unlike most disappearances is that we watched it happen on camera in real time. And that's disturbing and reminds me a little bit of the Eliza Lamb and the Cecil Hotel case, which I'm here in LA. Haven't driven past Cecil Hotel yet. I tend to avoid that part of downtown. But people still don't know what happened to her either. And people on the internet have been combing through everything, including the elevator footage, for years and still haven't reached a definite conclusion. So this reminds me a little bit of that. And what's even crazier is this video has over 16 million views on YouTube. 16 million people have watched Lars sprint through the terminal and go over that fence and disappear into the woods. Not one of us, nobody, can tell you what he's running from or what happened. So Get cozy, get comfortable, grab yourself a fun little drink if that is your vibe. If you're in the car, obviously pay attention to the road. But we are going to go deep and it's probably going to stay with you. So let's open the file. Before we get into what happened, because obviously that's what we all want to get to, I want you to know who Lars Mittank was, because this matters. It really, truly matters to the story and how you receive the story. So Lars was born February 9th, 1986 in Itzehoe, a small, quiet town in northern Germany. The kind of town where nothing crazy usually happens, and people would definitely kind of like it that way. He was an engineer, and he worked at a power plant. He had a stable job, skilled work, and he showed up every day. He had a girlfriend, too, a solid group of friends that he'd known since high school, and he loved sports, specifically football, and specifically Werder Bremen, which is going to become relevant a little bit later. He was also, and this detail is going to matter, experienced in hunting, fishing, and trapping. So this guy knows how to survive in the woods if it came to it. He knew how to be in the outdoors. He understood survival in a way that most 28-year-olds don't know. And then there was his mom, Sandra. Everyone knew Lars mentioned Sandra. The two of them were very close in a way I would say almost beyond normal. He called her regularly, checked in, he shared things, the kind of relationship where, you're an adult, you have your own life, but you just want to talk to your mom a lot because you want to. You want to keep her close. That detail is definitely going to break your heart a little bit later, so just warning you now. By every measure, Lars was completely normal. No history of mental illness, no known substance issues, no drama in his life. His friend Paul described the trip to Bulgaria on German television later. And this is a quote: "We relaxed on the beach, swam in the pool, played football, went clubbing. He was relaxed and he was in a good mood." That was the week of June 2014. Lars and 5 friends had traveled to Golden Sands, which is a popular beach resort on Bulgaria's Black Sea coast. Warm weather, cheap drinks, beach days, the kind of holiday that young Europeans do every summer, which that sounds nice. It was also Lars's first time ever leaving Germany, his first trip abroad. He expected to be home in a week. He never came home. Okay, so it is now July 6th. This is the second to the last night of the trip. Lars and his friends are at a bar, and then Lars gets into it with a group of German tourists who were supporting Bayern Munich. Now, if you don't follow European football, which I don't, so apologies if I'm mispronouncing anything, Bayern Munich versus Werder Bremen is a real rivalry. So apparently that's a really big rivalry. Bayern is the powerhouse, Bremen is the underdog in the situation. So obviously when one person supports one, the other supports the other, there's usually some trash talk that happens in that situation. And usually it just stays there. Nothing crazy, your run-of-the-mill trash talk, your competition. But it did not stay trash talk that night. Something happened. And here's where it gets a little bit murky because accounts from his friends, they differ slightly. And what everyone agrees on is that at some point during the night, Lars got separated from his friends. And when he came back the next morning, there was visible damage. He had been beaten up badly enough to rupture his eardrum. But this is interesting. Lars didn't just say that he got into a bar fight. He said the Bayern fans had hired men to attack him and that it wasn't just a scuffle, it was organized. The specific people had been paid to find him and to hurt him. Now, was that true? Nobody has ever been able to confirm it, and his friends weren't there, so it's hard to tell. To this day, there still have been no witnesses that have come forward. And later, as Lars' behavior deteriorates, the question of what was real versus, what the mind was generating becomes the entire center of this case. But in that moment, on the morning of July 7th, Lars believed it completely. He was injured, he was scared, and he believed that specific men had been hired to hurt him and that they were still out there looking for him. A local doctor did examine him, and he told him do not fly. The pressure changes in the cabin could cause serious damage to an already damaged and ruptured eardrum. So he prescribed an antibiotic called cefprozil and told Lars to rest for a few days. His friends did offer to stay, but Lars refused. He told them to go. He told them that he would be totally fine and that he'd book a later flight and be home in a couple of days. His friends left Bulgaria on July 7th, and Lars was left there alone. In a foreign country, for the first time in his life, with a head injury, and, men that he believed had been hired to attack him that were still somewhere in the city. What happens next and what unfolds next happens in less than 24 hours. After his friends left, Lars needed somewhere to stay, and it was peak summer season, so Golden Sands was fully booked. So he moved into a cheaper hotel closer to the airport called Hotel Color, a budget place, and it's definitely a little bit more of a rundown area of the city. Unfamiliar streets and a different neighborhood entirely than what he had seen previously. Almost immediately, something shifted. Hotel CCTV captured Lars moving nervously through the corridors. He was pacing up and down the hallway, peering out of windows at the street below, pressing himself against walls before he was rounding corners and hiding in the elevator, standing inside the elevator, not going anywhere, not pressing any buttons, just hiding in a small space that somehow felt safer than being out in the open in the hallways. I'm going to stop here for a second. This is a man who 12 hours ago was on a beach holiday with his friends, and now he is alone and hiding in a hotel elevator in the middle of the night. Something happened to Lars between the moment his friends boarded the plane and these CCTV videos. Something shifted, and whatever it was, it shifted fast. He also left the hotel at 1 a.m., and then he came back about an hour later, and nobody knows where he went and what he did in that hour. That hour is just gone, and there's no footage of where he went. No witnesses saw him, no record of anything. An hour of his life completely unaccounted for in the middle of the night in a city where he believed people were out to kill him. So what happened in that hour? Did he meet someone? Did somebody find him? Did something happen that we have no record of just because there were no cameras where it happened? We don't know, and we may never know. But that hour sits in the middle of this case like a black hole, and everything kind of just orbits around it. Okay, now we're going to go back to the calls, because while all of this is happening, Lars was calling Sandra multiple times throughout the night, whispering. He was whispering because he was afraid of being heard. He told her that people were following him, that 4 men were pursuing him, and that they wanted to rob or kill him. He asked her to call his bank and cancel all of his credit cards immediately. Sandra said, "I thought, God, my son is in danger. I could hear his heart pounding over the phone." She could hear his heart through the phone. Can you imagine being on the other side of that call? Your son is in a foreign country in a different place, which he's never traveled abroad, and he's on the phone calling you in the middle of the night, panicked that people are coming after him, telling you to cancel all of his credit cards, and you can hear his heart through the phone. Sandra urged him to call the police, yet he said he didn't trust them. Then she urged him to go to the German consulate. He said that he was afraid to go outside. So she asked him to call his friends and have one of them come back, but he said that he didn't want to worry them. Then he texted her asking the side effects of his antibiotic, because remember, he's taken an antibiotic from the doctor for his ear and whether it could cause what he was feeling. And then in the morning, he called her again, and he told her that the people that are pursuing him were getting closer. Then he took a taxi to the airport. He texted Sandra to say that he'd arrived safely, and that was the last message that she ever got from her son. Okay, so it is now July 8th. Lars arrives at the Varna airport by taxi. So he has his big backpack. He's got everything in there with his wallet, his passport, his phone, everything. And he walks through the entrance of the airport. He has one thing that he has to do there. He has to go see the airport doctor and get medical clearance to fly with his healing eardrum. And then he just has to go home. So 10 minutes maybe, then the gate, then Germany, then Sandra. The airport physician was Dr. Kosta Kostov. Lars sits down, Kostov examines him, and this is kind of interesting. By Kostov's account, Lars seemed relatively calm at the start of the appointment. Nervous, yeah, but coherent. He was talking normally. He checks the ear and he determines that, okay, he's good. He's perfectly fine to fly. He tells Lars that he can go home, he can fly, but Lars doesn't move. He stays in the chair and he starts talking and asking Kostov about the medication. What does it do? What are the side effects? Could it be causing whatever it is that he's experiencing? And then Kostov says something that is one of the most important details and chilling details in the case. Lars told him that he hadn't actually been taking the antibiotic. He had never even filled the prescription. Hold on. Lars spent the night texting his mother asking about the side effects of a medication that he never took. He never picked it up from the pharmacy. So whatever is happening to him, whatever he was feeling, whatever he was experiencing, it definitely wasn't the antibiotic. Because, again, he never picked it up. I'm going to let you sit with that for just a second because that one detail eliminates one of the most common explanations that people try and say for the whole case, that it was some side effect from the medication, but he never actually picked it up, therefore he never took it. Back to the doctor's office. Lars won't leave. He's sitting there asking questions, trembling slightly. Eyes keep moving towards the door, and the doctor is getting kind of concerned. The appointment goes on longer than it should, and then the door opens. A construction worker walks in. At the time, the airport was under renovation, so workers were coming in and out all day, which completely normal, completely routine. And this specific man was wearing a work uniform and a vest, like, the construction vest. So he definitely stands out. He looks like a construction guy. Nothing unusual. Nothing threatening. He came to speak to the doctor about something completely unrelated to Lars. Lars looked at him and something just broke completely. He stood up, he was shaking, and he said, and these are his exact words in Dr. Kostov's official statement, the last words that anyone ever recorded of Lars: "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." He threw his backpack down, his wallet hit the floor, his passport, his phone, and he didn't pick any of it up. He left it all. Everything, his entire identity, every document to prove who he was that he needs to go home, on the floor of a doctor's office in a Bulgarian airport. And then he ran. Dr. Kostov stood there, and he told investigators later, "I can't think of a single reason why he left my office in such a panic. I'm still confused." A construction worker in a vest walked through the door, and Lars just booked it and left everything behind. What did he see? What did that face mean to him? Was it somebody from the bar that he recognized? Somebody from the hotel? Someone that maybe he'd seen at 1 a.m. in the corridor of the hotel in that missing hour? And this kind of reminds me of the airport girl. Do you remember her getting on the plane? There's that video, and she was like, "Something's not right." And people were like, what did she see? Like, some people were speculating that maybe she saw like a shapeshifter or alien, or I don't know, but I don't know. It's kind of giving me that vibes a little bit. Or was it completely nothing? Just a construction worker in a vest that Lars's mind had just deteriorated to that point where a completely ordinary looking person walking through the door was enough to just trigger complete panic. I don't know. And we're never really going to know. And the not knowing is something that really just sticks with this case and cases like this. Okay, so Coming back to the airport cameras pick him up now. Yellow t-shirt, he's moving fast through the terminal, and then he ducks into the men's bathroom. And after that, he comes back out, but when he comes back out, there's no backpack. He left it in the bathroom. So he has nothing now. No ID, no money, no phone, no way to prove who he is, no way to get home, and no way to contact anybody. He is completely untethered from his own life in every practical sense. And he is running full sprint through the terminal. People move out of the way. You can see it in the footage. This ripple of people that are stepping aside for a man who is clearly not okay. Nobody stops him. Nobody grabs him. And nobody just stops to say, hey man, like, are you all right? Are you okay? What's going on? He bursts through the exit doors into the Bulgarian summer heat. Across the parking lot, he's running across the parking lot, full speed, not looking back. Then he hits the perimeter fence. Now, this fence is 6 feet tall, and not only is it tall, it's topped with barbed wire. So it's the kind of fence that is going to stop anybody normally. It would stop somebody from coming in or stop somebody from hopping over. But he goes over it. Doesn't slow down. It just scales it right up. And the wire obviously cuts at him, tears at him, but he doesn't stop. And then he lands on the other side. And from there, he runs into a field of sunflowers. And from there, he reaches a tree line on the far side of the field, and then the camera loses him. That's it. That is the last video or image of Lars Mittank running through an airport, scaling a barbed wire fence, and then running into a forest in southeastern Bulgaria with no shoes, no ID, no money, no phone, nothing. This was over 10 years ago, and he has not been seen since. The moment that Lars didn't board his flight, airport staff knew that something was wrong. His luggage was there, his passport was on the floor of the doctor's office, but he wasn't there. Search teams went into the forest almost immediately. They searched the sunflower field, they searched the tree line, and they searched the construction zones and brush around the airport perimeter. The terrain out there is dense and it is uneven. So, thick brush, trees, ditches, the kind of landscape where you can vanish kind of quickly. And with that search, they found nothing. Not a shoe, not a piece of clothing, not a single trace. Sandra found out her son had never even boarded his flight when the airport finally reached her. She'd been sitting there waiting for him to land in Germany, but he didn't land. Sandra then hired a private investigator almost immediately, a man named Andreas Gutig, who traveled to Bulgaria and went through every hospital in the region checking for unidentified male patients admitted around that date and time. And then he checked police records. He interviewed witnesses at the hotel and the airport. He really did look everywhere. But he found nothing. Sightings started coming in once the story went public. From across Europe, Germany, Austria, the Czech Republic, a truck driver claimed that he gave Lars a lift in Dresden about a year after the disappearance. The tip was investigated thoroughly, but it was a dead end. Then reports came in from as far as Porto Velho, Brazil. Every single one of these tips went nowhere. Then Sandra started appearing on television. In Germany, in Bulgaria, she appealed directly to anybody who might have seen him. She printed thousands of missing persons flyers. Thousands. And when those ran out, she just printed more. Then she created a Facebook page called Find It Lars Mittank, which is Find Lars Mittank in English. That page currently, as of now, has over 55,000 members in it. 55,000 people actively following the search for one man. And she has never stopped. Sandra's theory, and the one that she's held through years of dead ends, is that the head trauma from the assault caused some kind of memory loss. and that Lars is out there somewhere, homeless maybe, not knowing who he is, not knowing that he has a mother who has spent a decade looking for him. She said in one interview, perhaps that fight stressed him out and it triggered something in him. And then she said, we had a special bond. As of right now, Lars would be 38 years old, and the case is still officially open. The Facebook page is still active, and Sandra is still searching for her son. And that is just the amount of love to look 10 years and to not give up and to just continuously do everything is just amazing. If Lars is alive and he hears this somehow, please find a way to let her know. Okay, theories. Let's actually get into them because there are several, and these are just the biggest ones. One, the antibiotic reaction. This is the one that gets cited the most, honestly, because, it's clean, neat, kind of sounds cut, dry, case closed. The antibiotic cefprozil, a cephalosporin, has documented psychiatric side effects in rare cases. Hallucinations, paranoia, full psychotic breakdowns with no history. And obviously the timeline seems to fit. He gets the prescription, and after that he deteriorates and has some sort of complete break. Except, and I can't stress this enough, Lars never took the medication. He told Dr. Kostov himself that he never filled the prescription. So that would kind of cut that out of the theories. And it still gets cited. And I'm kind of surprised that it still gets cited so often and tends to be kind of a main theory in this case if it's never proven or shown that he actually filled it. And he told the doctor that he never filled it and never took it. Unless, and this is kind of like the darker version amongst this theory, he was given something without his knowledge, whether that was at the bar or at the hotel, maybe during that missing hour at 1 a.m. Some sort of substance that amplified everything that he was experiencing. But again, there's zero evidence for this, but there's also no way to rule it out because, Lars was never found and never tested. The next one is first episode psychosis, which again reminds me of Eliza Lamb and some of the theories that think that because she had stopped her medication, she had some sort of psychotic break. So this one, I think, is one of the more medically realistic explanations for this, so I want to give it some real weight behind it. First episodes of psychosis can happen at any age to anyone with no prior warning, no signs necessarily, and no family history. So it can be triggered by things such as a combination of physical trauma or extreme stress, isolation, sleep deprivation, sometimes just nothing. Sometimes they quote unquote just happen because that's kind of slightly terrifying. And of course, Lars had a head injury. He was alone for the first time in a foreign country. He wasn't sleeping. The CCTV footage from the hotel shows him up at 1 a.m. He was hiding in the elevator. Calls to his mom, Sandra, throughout the night. Supposedly, he wasn't eating properly. He had no support system around him. If you were designing the worst possible conditions to trigger a first psychotic episode in somebody, it kind of sounds like it's what Lars was living those past 24 hours. And the progression of his symptoms is pretty consistent with how acute psychosis builds. It doesn't just arrive or start all at once. It escalates. So maybe it starts as more of a manageable paranoia, like the paranoia about the men who were following him and looking to harm him. And then it gets worse from there. And Lars did seem to get worse throughout the night. Finally, he reaches a complete break in the doctor's office when a totally normal man in a work vest walks through the door. But here's where this gets a little or a lot of complicated. I don't think a lot of people talk about this enough. Lars had hunting, fishing, and trapping experience. He knew how to survive in the outdoors. He understood the wilderness. So in a healthy state of mind, he probably could have survived in the Bulgarian forest or at least survived enough for somebody to find him or find his way to some sort of civilization. But in a full psychotic episode, barefoot, no water, no food, the heat, it's hot in July in southeastern Europe, not knowing where he was or what was happening to him, the odds of surviving that in that state are low. And the fact that nobody has ever been found in 10 years of searching is either because the terrain absorbed him completely, which is possible in a dense forest, or because he made it out somehow. And if he made it out, where did he go? The next one is foul play. Lars was scared before he ever got to the airport. He was genuinely, viscerally scared. He was hiding in that hotel elevator and he was barricading his door. He was whispering to his mother on the phone because he was scared of being overheard. He left the hotel at 1 a.m. for an hour. No explanation whatsoever. And then he asked Sandra to cancel all of his credit cards, either because he was afraid that somebody would access them or because he was preparing to move without some sort of financial trail. What if he was right? Varna and Bulgaria's Black Sea coast have documented connections to organized crime. If Lars accidentally got into a confrontation with the wrong people at the bar, people with money and people with resources or motivation, what if the paranoia wasn't paranoia? What if it was an accurate threat assessment? And then, obviously, the construction worker. Dr. Kostov saw nothing threatening about him. He was a man in a work vest walking into a medical office, completely routine. But Lars looked at him and said, "I don't want to die here," and then left his passport on the floor. What if Lars recognized him? What if something about that face in a uniform in that airport was the face of somebody that Lars had seen during maybe that missing hour at 1 a.m. or somebody from the night before in the fight? If that's true, if real people were really after Lars and followed him to that airport, then whatever happened in that forest was not an accident. And the lack of body is not necessarily a mystery, it's the whole point. Obviously, we can't prove this. Obviously, we can't prove this. And I can't watch the footage and fully convince myself that what I'm seeing as a man with absolutely zero grip on reality. That's hard to tell from footage, and obviously people act differently when things are happening in external circumstances. But because there are moments in it where he looks so deliberate, so purposeful, it's interesting. Like sometimes he almost looks like he knows exactly where he's going and why. So, what if he did? The last one is voluntary disappearance. I don't necessarily buy it. People who plan to disappear don't necessarily run. They walk, they look calm. They have a story ready, and they don't leave their passport on the floor in a doctor's office. A passport is the first thing that you need to go somewhere new, to start over. Sandra also addressed this one directly. She said she doesn't believe it because of the bond that they shared. And I believe her. A man who calls his mother that much, who has that kind of relationship, doesn't just vanish and ghost and never make contact for 10 years. That's just not who Lars was. So here's kind of what I'm thinking. I think something real happened to Lars in Bulgaria that obviously we don't have the full picture of. I think that missing hour at 1 a.m. that nobody knows where he was or what he was doing, I think that matters more than anybody has been able to prove. I think that the construction worker who walked through the door meant something specific to Lars. Not that he was just simply unwell, but maybe he recognized something, a face, a signal, something, or maybe he was in some sort of psychosis, and to him, it did mean something, whether in, reality it meant something or not. And I think that whatever happened in that forest, we don't know, and we're not going to know because there's nobody left to tell us. as far as we know. Nobody has ever come forward with information or claiming to witness anything for that. And this is the version that I don't know, I just can't shake. And it's the one that makes me uncomfortable because it means that somewhere there are people that know what happened to Lars and they haven't said a word in 10 years. And I don't know if they ever will. So this case is in the files, not just, because of what happened, but because of what we don't know about what happened. There's a moment in the footage when Lars, right when he goes over the fence, just for a second before he reaches the tree line, and he's running through the sunflowers, full speed, yellow shirt. There's just something about watching that. Watching a person in real time disappear from the world, never to be seen of or heard again. And I don't know. It's just unsettling, to say the least. And because he was terrified, whatever Lars experienced in those 48 hours after his friends left, whether it was chemically driven, psychologically generated, or completely and utterly real, it was the most frightening experience of his entire life. It overrode everything. His survival instinct, his self-preservation, his passport, his shoes, his identity, his backpack, his mom. All of it left on a floor in Bulgaria because everything felt worse than staying there. Running into that forest with nothing felt safer than staying there. What did Lars see? I don't know. And that question, that genuinely unanswerable question, is exactly why this is in the files. Because the 1111 files, they're not just about aliens and cryptids and government cover-ups. It's about being at the edge of what we can't explain, and about the things that happen to real people in real time that just don't have a clean answer. It's about the mysterious and the unsolved and the things that keep you up at night that make you question, what is reality? And what did happen? Lars Mittank is one of those things. 16 million people have watched him run, and none of us, no one, can tell you what he was running from. The file remains open. And that is file 04, Lars Mittank. If you know anything, if you've ever seen someone matching his description, 5'11", dark blonde hair, a scar on his left forearm, please report it. The Findet Lars Mittank Facebook page has over 55,000 members and is still active. German and Bulgarian authorities still have this case open. It is not too late, and if you know something, it is not too late to speak up. Before I go, I want to hear from you. If you have experienced something that you can't explain, whether it was an encounter, a dream, a glitch in the matrix, something spooky, I want to hear about it. Submit your story at the link in my bio. So, podcast link stories will go into my listener files, which are going to be my monthly episodes dedicated entirely to you and your stories, because I believe that they genuinely deserve to be heard, and I want to hear them. The shorter ones can go on TikTok. Both matter, and it's also based on preference, whatever you would prefer, and you can put that preference in the form. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it out to somebody else who wants to go down the rabbit hole. And I'd really appreciate if you could leave a review. It definitely helps more people find the files, whether that's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And of course, follow the 1111 files on Spotify, Apple, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, your audio listening platform of choice, wherever it may be, so that you'll never miss when a new file drops. Next week, we are opening a new file. And again, 1111 isn't a coincidence, and neither is the fact that you found this. I'll see you in the next file. And if you're ever on vacation and your friend gets injured, do not leave them behind. As much as they say it's okay, it's fine, stay with them and make sure that they get home safely.